Hi friends, it's David Bird with Reality Reimagined and welcome back to the channel. This is the first new video content that I'm recording for the channel. I started the channel in April of this year of 2019 and I went a little before I was ready to go. My wife and I were having a home built at the time, and so we were living in another place, and unfortunately that space became a little bit difficult to record content reliably without distractions and issues that were outside of my control. So I just made the decision to stop recording content for the channel and then relaunch it when I was ready to go in our new home with the office and the new setup and so forth. So I'm an award-winning photographer that focuses and specializes in fantasy composite work and fine art work. I do a lot of gel glamour work, and I am now stepping into the world of fashion, and it's an exciting endeavor. This channel is going to focus on Photoshop content as far as tips and tutorials that go anywhere from beginner steps inside of the program, beginner steps of photography itself, all the way through complex steps and procedures of things like compositing and creating fantasy artwork itself. So if you're new to this space and this channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell notification so that the YouTube powers that be can see that this channel exists and hopefully help it continue to grow and boost forward as I share my knowledge with all of you on this platform. So this video is coming out today on Black Friday of the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States in 2019. And this video is in response to a ton of questions that I'm seeing in social media groups on Facebook about Luminar 4. It's a program from Skylum Software that has just come out, and a lot of folks are simply asking one kind of question, which is, does this program do what it is marketed to do? The big flashy aspect of it is saying that the AI is incredibly powerful inside the program, and the one feature that folks seem to gravitate toward is the sky replacement option in the program itself. So I decided to make a quick video doing a demonstration of a sky replacement for the image and kind of talk through some of my philosophies about software like this and what it can do, as well as my opinions on whether or not it is truly a replacement to Lightroom itself through Adobe. So I'm going to demo the program to you and then show you a few things, and then we'll finish up talking about my philosophies of it. Welcome back to the channel. Let's get started. So this image inside of Photoshop that you can see has not been retouched at all. It's just simply been opened from Adobe Camera Raw and brought straight into Photoshop itself. Now you can purchase two different versions of Luminar 4. You can either get the program as a standalone program, or you can get it as a plugin to go into Photoshop and or Lightroom. And I purchased it as a plugin, not a standalone, because I have a current subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud where I have access to Photoshop and Lightroom itself. And again, it's important to distinguish that because it is meant to be, or it is certainly being advertised to be, Skylum's advertising Luminar 4, to be a replacement to Lightroom and potentially a replacement of Photoshop or any kind of photo editing software. And I will give you my opinions about that at the end of the video. But I have the plugin. It's inside of Adobe Photoshop. I'm using Adobe Photoshop CC 2020 on a PC. So I'm going to go to Filter and down to Skylum Software and then hit Luminar 4. I've never owned any of the previous versions of Luminar. This is the first program I've ever purchased from their company. I got a message a few months ago offering a pretty significant discount to it and a collection bundle of presets and so forth. And it was a relatively small price point that I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot and see. Because when I saw the video for the sky replacement, it's impressive, but again, I've been around the block for a few times, and so I know how some of these programs actually work. So anyway, we're inside of the program. If you've used any kind of third-party software that does artistic enhancement to images or can do things like sky replacement or so forth, these types of programs are pretty much one and the same. They have presets just like Lightroom that you can use to augment the photo from a basic design or develop sense and create some art on top of the picture, and then it has some more complex pro options of things that you can do to the image, and sky replacement is one of them. So this is the Essentials tab that you can see here, and so when you see Essentials, we have all of these options here where we can expand any of these like light, and we can adjust different things like exposure, smart contrast, highlight, shadows, anything in the basic module of Adobe Camera Raw or the basic tab inside of the develop module of Lightroom. So most software programs have something similar. The AI Enhance is essentially letting the algorithm decide the best thing it needs to do to accent the image or to enhance the sky. If you already have a great sky and you want to enhance it, there you go. You can do structure, where it's essentially going to work on some of the luminosity and some of the details of the image and try to provide an overall boost to detail and function and sharpness to create structure in the photo. Color, black and white conversion, details enhancer is actually kind of interesting a little bit as far as being given control over small, medium, and large details, and then sharpening. And it's the details enhancer. I've actually been doing a lot more exploration of this and different functions of use inside of Photoshop. Most of these tabs have an advanced settings that you can expand to see other things like detail protection. So if you boost all the details significantly, the detail protection tries to minimize the artifacts that are introduced in the pixels and the noise of the image itself. You have a denoise option, landscape enhancer, vignette, and so forth. So that's under the Essentials tab. And then as you can see, there's other tabs like creative, portrait, and then the professional tab. Down at the bottom of the program through here are different essentially presets that are looks. And all these are essentially combinations of different sliders in these functions here. So if you don't want to spend the time of exploring these to augment your image, you can simply come down and click one of these, like let's click golden hour, how about golden hour 2? Let's click that one. So when I do, it's going to augment the image doing some different things, and it shows you here, these words have been highlighted to show you that it did something to these sections. It expanded the color a little bit, it did an AI enhance kind of thing, and it did something to the light under those sections. So you know where to go back in to fine-tune whatever it did to your photo. Or if you simply truly just want to be quick with this entire process, you can come back down to the preset where you click it and then just slide the amount down, and it will reduce the overall effect of what it did to your image itself. Let me establish really quickly too, I'm using a PC, and it's a pretty powerful computer. It's got a lot of top-of-the-line hardware in it. And I have noticed, unfortunately, that the Luminar 4 program tends to run a little slow in certain aspects, especially when it needs to render things to the images. So it's definitely drawing upon the GPU and the computer quite a bit. And I have a very nice video card in the computer. I have an RTX 2060 Super, and it is running a little slow. So hopefully they will be able to update the software to kind of overcome some of those basic issues. So again, explanations that are basic to this process. You will essentially just choose one of these tabs and then come into the different things that it can do and start working on everything and see what you develop. As you explore these different tabs and you start creating a unique look of some kind, you can come down to this option where it says Save New Look and essentially name it whatever you want it to be, I would assume, and it will create a preset for you. You have control here, Luminar Looks, so you can do all of these are just essentially collections of presets, just like any of these that are based on certain things. And these were the ones that came with the early adoption of the software. And then get more looks, you can go and purchase packs of presets for a relatively small price point to get more looks. So that's the explanation of the program. I'm actually going to go and do reset adjustments so it takes the image back to what it was when we pulled this in. Now I want to go and show you the sky replacement option, which is under Pro. Where is the sky replacement? I don't quite remember because, oh, here we go. It's under Creative. So as far as I can tell, and I'm not a programmer, and I don't work for Skylum. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not supported by them, and that will become painfully clear at the end of this video. As far as I can tell, part of what the AI is doing is using luminosity values in the image to determine what it needs to alter. So it's looking at a photo and saying, okay, which one is different from the other, and then using that information to create a mask. Specifically, when you're coming into AI sky replacement, I would imagine it's banking on one common foundational step, which is when you're a photographer and you're shooting outside, even if you're using off-camera flash, if you're not using off-camera flash to overpower the sun, then you're exposing for your subject, but generally your sky is going to be brighter or blown out or too hot or any of those terms in photography that will let you know a luminosity perspective. Your subject and usually the ground that they're standing on is exposed decently, but the sky is not. So unless you're using off-camera flash, and doing a lighting ratio where essentially you're balancing a proper exposure to your subject and also being able to expose for the sky. Or if you're doing a bracketed shot where you can expose for the sky and then put them together inside of Photoshop, you're going to have an image that looks like this, where the subject is decently exposed and illuminated, but the sky is a little too hot. It's a little too blown out. So this AI sky replacement option is using, in my opinion, most likely a luminosity mask of some kind, where it's looking at the data and saying, okay, we know they want to replace the sky, so it's blown out, so that's what it's going to do to try to make these changes. So part of doing something like this can be done, this process can be done very quickly in a program like Photoshop or potentially Lightroom. And part of this process is to select around things like trees, mountains, hair is a big thing. And so I am impressed with the program as far as sky replacement is concerned for things like selecting around hair. However, it will not always be that accurate for every single image. So I'm going to come to sky selection, and there's some skies that are built into it. So I'm going to go down and let's choose a dramatic sunset, and let's do dramatic sunset number 1. I clicked it and the program that quickly did the sky replacement. Now, I'm being honest and I'm being fair. I'm not trying to be rude, nor am I flaming, but I will always try to give you my most honest opinions in the realm of photography and Photoshop on this channel, or other channels like Patreon and my work that I do on social media. It's impressive. It's impressive because it's so quick. And that's fascinating, right? This is just a rendered preview. It's not actually made the change to the file, but there will always be issues and flaws. So I'm going to zoom in, and I have not tested this. I've just opened this image and went into it because I want to be as fair and as honest as possible. As you can see, it did a very good job of selecting around her hair and masked it rather well. Let's look at the dress. The bits of the dress that are a little bit more translucent, you're able to see through them, and it's masking and matching colors and so forth in the image itself, which is impressive. Let's look at the horizon line. And there we go. So I clicked zoom, and it's taking a bit of time to render all of that. So we don't have too much of a halo kind of effect there, but there are some options in the refinement of this where you can kind of adjust certain things. So like you can affect the overall global changes to the sky itself, which is dealing with color, luminosity, and so forth. You can relight the scene. You can move the horizon up and down if needs be, to make a better match to your image, and it's just feathering it down, essentially feathering a mask. The horizon blending, you can further blend. So this is where a halo issue, like we can see just a little bit right here on top of this mountain. If I increase the blending of the horizon, then it blends it out further and you get rid of those halos. And then as far as our subject is concerned, there isn't really a significant change to her. Her hair is extracted and it's rather decent. Then you can go to the advanced settings and close gaps. As realistically, I haven't found anything in the trial and error that I can really tell what that does. I'm assuming that it does things like gaps in between buildings or so forth, where it may have had issues in the fine tuning of those little crevices or things like that. Sky defocus is literally just going to do that. You're gonna, just essentially blur it out. So if you had a shallow depth of field shot, you're gonna get rid of some of that detail. And in this case, this is a shallow depth of field shot, as we can see with the mountain in the background. So in that case, then the defocusing would be essential to make it more realistic that this is there. And by defocusing it, I have also noticed that it does help with any kind of haloing around the edges and the perimeter. You can change the color, you can change the exposure of the sky itself, you can flip it horizontally, or you can just change the sky to another preloaded sky stock. And again, it's a very fast process and gives you a lot of quick options to see what you're doing. Here's an example. Here is some haloing. So I'm going to zoom in. Again, it's taking a moment to render that. There we go. And there's definitely some haloing going on around her. And this is where we can work on Sky Global. We can do the horizon blending and things like that to try to overcome that. But in my testing of this over a few days, testing it in various levels of images, both shot outside and shot in studio in a lighting controlled environment, I've noticed that there's just unfortunately a little too much haloing every now and then in the images. And you can potentially use some of these other tabs like light and so forth to try to overcome that, and then you can use a brush to paint it into the image itself, similar to how you would use an adjustment brush in Lightroom or in Adobe Camera Raw. The brush does not render very quickly at all, and if anybody's been around Lightroom in the past, they know that Lightroom still to this day unfortunately has a struggle with speed and efficiency under the hood as you start using more complex procedures in one solitary image inside of Lightroom. Fair warning, I don't use Lightroom very much at all. I'm a Photoshop boy. I've been a Photoshop boy since Photoshop 4.0, and Lightroom's a great program. I just don't use it. I prefer to use Photoshop. So here is another thing that I want to point out. Based upon the Sky stock that you've chosen, it also is contaminating the subject. The subject is not very clearly selected out and protected from the changes. And I have a feeling that part of this is to do with also trying to match overall luminosity value, so that if you're using a piece of sky stock that has got darker clouds like this one, it's trying to reduce the overall luminosity of the entire picture itself to do a more proper blend. Again, this is the software or the AI or Skynet doing this for you. So let's go back to the creative tab into the sky replacement. So you'll notice that her face is darker in this one, but if we go back to that first one, it becomes a little brighter because it's essentially masking it on her face and doing a whole luminosity change to the image as far as I can tell to try to match the overall luminosity to match the person to it. So if you expose the person and they're a little brighter, and then you put some dark clouds behind them, they would stand out like a sore thumb because there's two varying luminosity values. It's trying to blend that and feather that across. That causes more issues and more contamination to the image. And yes, you can use the brush to paint that out on a mask. And using the brush inside of this program, I'm being honest and fair. I'm not trying to be witty or funny. Using the brush is a disaster. I have used it and it renders incredibly slowly. It's difficult to understand what it's doing, and you do not have the finesse and control that a brush inside of Photoshop gives you, or arguably a brush inside of Lightroom, even though I think the brushes in Lightroom are not as fluid and efficient as brushes in Photoshop are. So looking at this, for me and the type of work that I do, I'm saying this not to be boastful or arrogant. I'm trying to truthfully give you an understanding of who I am. I'm an advanced user of Photoshop. I have won awards because of my skill set inside of Photoshop. I'm currently nominated for a Grand Imaging Award through Professional Photographers of America for my work in Photoshop. So I know a lot about the program, and I will not be using this software to replace Sky. To potentially give a proof or a mock-up to a client, maybe, because it can do it quickly. But the issues that it creates at this point in the program, trying to be fair, at this point in the program, the issues that it creates take more time to repair than the time it takes to just simply do the work inside of Photoshop. Now, I understand, let's get into the philosophy of how I feel about these programs. I understand that this program is very clearly being marketed to people who don't have an advanced knowledge of Photoshop or Lightroom. And that is okay, because Lightroom or Luminar 4 or other programs like it that have been around for a long time, their goal is to give people agency so that they can step into photography and feel like they have a champion for the other aspect of photography, which is artwork and creating artwork and digitally inside of one of these programs. So for the person who doesn't know how to use Lightroom or Photoshop or these other programs, that you can click this button and get a green tint to your photo, or desert vibes, or golden hour 1. And way back, when I relied upon programs like this to augment my images, I was incredibly impressed with what it would do, and I got so excited, and it gave me agency to keep going forward. So I understand its use and its power. But over time, the first software that I used was Color Effects 2 from Nik, N-I-K. They're no longer in existence, and Google bought out the program, when it was in Color Effects 4, and then they made it free, and then they stopped supporting it, and now there's a company called DxO that supports it. And it's another program just like this that has multiple different things it can do artistically to a photo to give you a certain look. And then it tries to take all of the basic steps and uses of things like adjustment layers and so forth inside of Photoshop and put it all in a clever UI where you just have a little slider. And it does everything globally to the picture. You cannot target select what you're trying to do. So things like making a face darker when you're replacing the sky is a byproduct and a consequence of global refinement or global changes to your photo. And the programs get more and more adaptive to the basic issues that they cause. And every year there's a new piece of software that comes out that is marketed as the Photoshop Lightroom killer. And usually it has some kind of AI that does some kind of background replacement or sky replacement, because it seems like these companies are trying to capitalize on that. So they can say, look, you can take a photo and in one click, it just changes the background like that. You can put anything in there and people get so excited and they buy it. But the problem is, and I'm being fair, 75% of the time, the images that are demoed for these software, for these programs, have been chosen purposefully because they're easy for the algorithm to extract. When you see demos on YouTube of people saying, look how easy it is to extract something from this background, and especially capture the hair in the extraction, they're showing you an image on one solid color background. And it's a solid color background that does not play into the hair color itself of the clothing. So yes, Photoshop, Luminar 4, other software will do that beautifully and quickly. But the moment you introduce, you may photograph the person on a seamless piece of paper that is one color. But if that paper isn't being illuminated by itself so that it maintains that one color, as well as your subject with different lights, if you're just using one or two lights or no light at all and you're shooting outside, there's going to be color variance everywhere, even though it's one color of paper. Then the software, Skynet, can't save you from artifacts and issues. And it is evident because these programs keep being designed with elements put into them trying to overcome that issue. And I do believe eventually the technology will get there, where it can create a program that with one click it does everything across 75% of all known issues and does it beautifully. And that program also will build a 7-foot tall walking robot that will be looking for John Connor. We're not there yet, thankfully. Here's my bottom line. There's some elements in here that are interesting that give you a quick way to do something. And this program, I'm sure, will come to some sort of use for me in the future, most likely as a proofing mechanism for a commercial client. I like the detail slider in there. I've been playing with it, but ultimately there's other ways to create details in Photoshop that are just a little bit more accurate and precise because they're strategic. This program is impressive. I'm excited to see how it evolves. I believe it is being marketed as being an amazing piece of software that can fully just go crazy right away. And I don't think that's true. I think the AI is impressive. I think it needs refinement. I think this was launched a little too early. So let's do one more thing, because I've seen a lot of folks sharing this, both in social media and on YouTube, where they come in and they're doing this Starry Night change, or they're doing the galaxy image and saying, look how cool that is. It is pretty. It's using some galaxy, a Milky Way galaxy stock. That's great. Again, notice how it made her darker. You can do the same thing inside of Photoshop in less than 5 minutes when you get comfortable understanding the basic tools of the quick selection tool, a layer mask, couple of little techniques on fixing halos, and you can replace the sky very quickly. And it gives you strategic change. So again, bottom line, software like this, I applaud that it gives agency to people to start creating artwork digitally and fulfill the other half of the equation of photography. Photography, to me, is 50% of the job, and the other 50% of the job is doing the artwork yourself. And if you can use a program like this to get you further on that journey, then I absolutely applaud you for doing that, and I support people purchasing this program. However, as I've said mimicking my own background, it will only be able to take you so far. It will always introduce problems into the picture that the software simply cannot overcome. The human has to get behind the wheel and drive. And to do that, you're going to have to use a program like Lightroom or Photoshop to overcome. Because at this point right now, this software with the brush tool, which is essentially your gateway to repairing what it does that causes issues, that brush tool is tragic right now. And I'm not trying to be funny, it's tragic. And I have a very powerful computer. So I may make another video later on, a few months from now, as the software gets updates, if it does. I'm assuming it will. And if you've already purchased it, then definitely play around and use it and work with it as much as possible. And know that you'll have to eventually embrace Lightroom or Photoshop again to carry you all the way through. And if you're sitting on the fence about purchasing this program, my only advice to you about whether or not you should purchase it is this. If you have a passing knowledge of Lightroom, if you have a passing knowledge of Photoshop, in my opinion, it is better to spend those dollars towards further education in either one of those platforms. I'm not supported by Adobe on this channel or in my professional career at all. I'm simply telling you the truth. It is better for you to spend those resources learning more about how to use tools like quick selection and layer masks and so forth than purchasing a program that will be a click of a button and try to do it for you. So thank you for watching this video today. Thank you for your support on the channel. Welcome back to this relaunch of it. I'm so excited. I have a lot of content already recorded and edited so that we can never really be seamlessly lost in stuff that we're posting and doing on this channel. If you're interested in learning more and deeper dives into the work that I do as an artist, you can always come to Patreon and support me. It's patreon.com/realityreimagined, where we do monthly content that covers basics all the way through very complex stuff inside of Photoshop and photography, as well as live videos where I will edit images of my own or your images, and you can ask questions and get some direct feedback and direct guidance in the work that you do. So thank you again for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And until next time, I'll see you out there in the world of Photoshop and not Luminar 4.